All right, we're rolling. Wow, there's already a ton of messages in the chat. Um, all right, so this is going to be a special edition episode of the GameFi Rundown. We have co-founder of Illuvium, Kieran Warwick. He's here to answer some tough questions, as I've been saying in the chats. Hopefully, I can live up to that. But Kieran, thank you for coming on. How you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad. Nothing like a little bit of clickbait to get the people humming. I like it.
No, I'm really going to put you on the spot. I got some good questions for you.
All right.
But
We'll
one
do
thing
it.
I will say is that when I reached out to Kieran, he told me specifically that he was not the hype man of Illuvium. So if anyone wants to create any hype in this chat, you gotta do it in the chat because he's not gonna do it for us. Um, but yeah, so let's just get right into it. So I wanted to start off strong with this airdrop that you've been talking about. So I do believe quoting you, you said this is going to be the largest Web3 gaming airdrop in history. So I think the people want to know a little bit about that. But to make this more of a hard hitting question, my question to you is: do we really need this? Because we've been talking about for a while that we don't need to incentivize people to come and play a really good game. So what's your reasoning behind this? And just any plans you want to share with us? Uh oh. I think you already got rugged. Ay, ay, ay. Yeah, there it is from TSG. Made the questions too tough. He had to leave. So I saw the Wi-Fi, by the way. The Wi-Fi was on his end, not mine. My Wi-Fi's strong right now. Oh no, so many comments. I don't know how to get rid of yours now.
Sorry. I don't know what
Yeah,
happened there.
yeah, you rugged out.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
Seems to be okay now.
Yeah, it looks good. It looks good now. I think that was on your end. I'm not sure if it was on my end, but that was the one thing I was worried about doing this live because something always seems to go wrong. Um,
Weird. I
so,
don't know. Oh, good. So your question was uh,
um,
around the airdrop and it being the largest in gaming history, et cetera, right?
yeah, I don't know if you missed any of that, but just basically, why do we need this? If we've been talking for 2 years that we don't need to incentivize gamers to come play a good game, so why kind of the change of heart of let's do an airdrop to get some people in? What is the thought process behind that?
So, firstly, there was no change in thought process. The whole idea of us having 1 million tokens put aside 3.5 years ago, before anyone had coined the term "play to airdrop" or anything like that, was for incentivization, right? Like we wanted to be able to get new users in. However, we did that. Maybe it was through large tournaments or milestones that you complete, challenges, whatever it was. We were always planning on utilizing that bucket, if you will, as marketing, right? Like that's the beauty of having a token. A traditional studio would have to go out there and spend, millions of dollars of advertising money in order to go and get people to play their games. And there's we don't have to do that, or we do, but in the sense that we're using tokens instead of fiat.
Okay. So what's the idea there? Just trying to bring in as many new people as possible and then, you know, I guess hooking them with the coin or whatever the airdrop is going to be and then keeping them there with great gameplay.
Yeah, so there's two things there, right? Like if you have a really good product that you back and you dangle a carrot in front of these people and say like, hey, you can generate a little bit of money by coming and playing our game. That gets them hooked, and then all of a sudden, they're happy to spend inside of the ecosystem, which is good for all of the token holders. Airdrops traditionally have been really good marketing. You see people go on Twitter and YouTube and Twitch and say like, wow, I just, got this $500 airdrop or whatever it is. You guys need to check this out. Go and either use this protocol or play this game, whatever it might be. But they've been used for 6, 7, 8 years now inside of this space, and they really work. I think it's come to light now probably because other people are other gaming studios are starting to use them. But as well, we're coming very, very close to launch, right? So that whole marketing strategy of what are we going to do come launch is starting to be revealed. And it's just a really, really good way for us to get as many new players into the system as possible. And we're happy to do it on launch because we're out of that sort of private beta state, and we're really happy with where the game is at, and it's just good timing.
Awesome. Now, can you share with us like a little bit of what this is going to look like? Like, is it going to be ILV tokens? Is it going to be more fuel crates? And like, who's going to be eligible for this? Is it going to be like signups in playing, or if you hold certain NFTs? Anything you can share on that?
So it's not finalized yet. I'm still building out the details, but I'd like to see 2 airdrops done, or two different drops, one campaign where, and I think a lot of people are like, hey, you just dropped the fuel. Is that one of them? And the answer is no, right? Like the thank you. I feel like is a good way to show our appreciation to people who have staked in the protocol. We'll break that up into where you've staked, how long you've staked, any sort of purchases that you've made in the ecosystem in terms of like Illuvatars, land purchases, any fees that were generated from your trading on the Illuvidex. So there'll be an array of things which will generate you points. Those points will then go towards you earning whatever portion you have in the airdrop. And so the first one is a thank you to people inside the ecosystem. I'm toying with the idea of like actually expanding that to try and get the additional networking effects of maybe going with partners like IMX as well and dropping their holders just to really promote the ecosystem on IMX and say thank you to those supporters as well. So that would be drop 1, not as big as what I'm thinking for drop 2, which will be the gameplay airdrop, where it'll be based on all 3 games. So playing IZ, playing Arena, playing Overworld, even playing Beyond to a certain extent. And there'll be numerous interactions and milestones for you to reach. It'll be a similar situation where each time you complete one of these or take one of these actions, you will generate points, and then those points will go towards your portion of the drop. And when I talk about the biggest gaming drop in history, I know some people have said, hey, but Bored Apes, did a $2 billion airdrop or whatever it is. We're obviously not going to go out and do that. The difference is that was a token distribution, right? So I'm defining them a little bit differently. When I talk about airdrops, I'm talking like, I guess the term that people use these days is play to airdrop. And we've got, as I said, we've got a very, very large bucket to dip into, and the valuation of our tokens is obviously quite substantial when you look at other gaming tokens out there. So we've got the stock, if you will, to do it, and yeah, we have the potential to be this biggest airdrop of all time in terms of just playing a game.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, and tell me if I get this correct. First airdrop is going to be for the people who have already been here, participating in the ecosystem. Maybe they have some land. Maybe they've been participated buying some discs. All of that's for the first airdrop. The second airdrop is going to be for getting new people in and just the gameplay starting from open beta, or is that going to take into consideration gameplay before open beta?
You'll have to find out. But yes,
Okay.
apart from that last bit, which I'll leave that as I'll leave that up to the speculators out there. But yes, up to that point, there's a thank you airdrop, and then there's going to be a new one that is a campaign that across all games, and yeah, very exciting.
All right. Well, before I move on to this last topic, one question would be: do you see any downside to an airdrop? Could it go wrong, or could you only do you only see upside to this?
It could do nothing, right? Like it's a little bit of a weird one, right? Like typically you would do an airdrop to gain, I guess, a little bit of market share, a bit more exposure across the ecosystem. There's 500, maybe even 1,000 like decent games that are building right now, and one way to cut through that fat is to come out with a decent airdrop. Now, the problem that those games have is when you're first launching, unless you're something like a Mavia or a Pixels that already has a lot of mind share in this space, the chance of your token airdrop being worth enough to really grab the attention of people is low, right? And so we sort of sit in this different space where we've been here for 3 years. We have a million plus people that have registered. Almost every single person in this space, at least gaming, has heard of Illuvium. And so for us, it's not so much about like getting that mind share of people, even though it definitely will, and especially going into launch, like that's the type of exposure that we want. But it's more about incentivizing people to try out the game for the first time and get hooked with our gameplay loops. Go and capture an alluvial and go, wow, this thing's worth $1,000 on the marketplace. Go and sell it. Then you go and tell your 20 friends. If that airdrop is the thing that gets them that initial person into the ecosystem, that goes and tells 20 people, and then those 20 people go and tell 100 people, then that's sort of what we're looking for when it comes to this airdrop.
All right, makes sense. So you did just mention Mavia. So they had a very successful launch, mainly because they decided to go with like a free to play model for most people, and I think they've had over 2 million downloads on the between the App Store and Google Play. So when it comes to Illuvium and Illuvium Zero, because that's going to be like the mobile game that starts out, how do you see that? Like, what do you see that looking like from a player coming in and downloading Illuvium Zero, the free to play version, and how does that integrate into like the economy, if it does at all, or is it just going to be like a standalone?
Yeah, so we haven't worked out how we're actually going to integrate it into the economy, and more so how we're going to integrate it into the land economy. There's obviously if we're very successful and we're generating a ton of revenue on launch, there has always been this lever for us to pull, which is sell more land plots. I am more leaning towards let's potentially not sell more land plots. Let's create a system where the existing landholders who have been with us for 2 years plus now, give them a stake of what free to play users can actually generate. And so Johnny and I were kind of talking back and forth about some pretty crazy models out there, which are like pure speculation at this point. Aaron hasn't, I haven't spoken to Aaron about it, but things like allowing free to play users to like join your guild, and then you as the main landholder, you're getting fuel production from these free to play plots. It turns into like a bit of a marketing referral play, because you as the main landowner, it's in your best interest to get as many free to play players as possible to come into the system to generate land for you, because you're getting your small percentage of that. So you as a landholder aren't sitting there like, this sucks, what, all these free to play players are coming in. It works for our overall metrics, because then all of a sudden you've got a free to play game that becomes a very attractive proposition for the 3-4 million people out there that can only access Illuvium on mobile. That's the first thing. They don't necessarily have the specifications in their PC to be able to access Overworld and Arena. And so it gives them an access point, but it also makes it somewhat attractive for them to play. But all of these things are just speculation at this point. Like, I'm just throwing out stuff to Johnny to think about. The main thing is getting a free to play version on the app stores. So when we do this airdrop, similarly to the idea of having some sort of small revenue generation ability, these guys will be able to go out and effectively farm the airdrop just by playing the game as well. And that's going to severely increase our player numbers on Zero, similar to how Marvia and whatever have done it.
Yeah. Now you mentioned that there are going to be people out there who don't have the computers to play the overworld. Do you see a future in Illuvium where you could go through the whole loop, the whole economy loop, without needing a computer, just on mobile?
It's interesting you say that. And 12 months ago, I would have said absolutely not. Just purely because the overworld is meant to be, experienced in all of its glory, its awesome graphics, being able to capture the creatures and actually experience that is part of it. However, we're also thinking, this is something that Aaron has proposed, which is more so for arena players. If arena starts taking off and it gets really big and people are like, okay, I need to go and get a new alluvial, and they don't necessarily want to play the overworld in that RPG type environment where it's a bit of a grind. You got to go out there, you got to get the right equipment, you got to get shards. If someone is a keen auto battler player, like a TFT guy, they're probably just like, they're really expensive getting them on the marketplace, but my time is worth something. And so we're thinking about having a way where you can basically speed run the overworld by not actually going and doing it. You don't get anywhere near as much of the acquisition of assets as going through, but it means you don't actually need to go into there. You basically just hit travel and call it a speed travel, and it just goes loads and says you picked up XYZ. If we were to do that, that would be applicable for mobile. But again, it's just an idea at the moment. It things like that would need to go through the council and the community to feel feedback off that.
Yeah, I think that'd be a massive opportunity, because there's a ton of people around this world that they play on their phone, and that's why games like Axie and games like Pixels, I believe, is mobile. That's why they have so many users.
But
Let's see.
yeah, I mean,
Go
we're in terms of arena, absolutely, and that I think will turn into one of those games where we get as soon as that goes onto mobile and people see these new game modes that we're building. I think it's got the potential to bring in tens of millions of players.
Awesome. All right. So, final question on free to play. Do you see a path for a free to play player to get the full experience? Like, I guess breaking down the paywall and maybe making it a pay mountain. Can you see someone coming in as a free to play player and grinding enough, spending enough time, and working their way up to be able to get the full experience? Or is it going to require some money?
I
Like if they
mean,
want to
what
travel stage 3 region kind of thing.
I mean, you played Arena. I think the idea is that we get Arena to a stage where if you're pretty skilled, you can go around, you can get the tier zero alluvials. You might even be able to grind to the point where if you put enough hours in, you can go from getting tier zero alluvials to getting, you know, tier ones. But it is going to cost you a little bit to travel to those regions. But maybe you picked up that money from selling some of the tier zero alluvials if you've leveled them up and someone doesn't want to do that grind. So you've sold them on the marketplace, therefore you got a few bucks. You can use that on fuel now. So there is a progression curve there that you can go through as a free to play player. It's just going to take hours and hours and hours of time.
Yeah. Now, I think just the possibility that there is a way is a big draw for a lot of people because there's going to be some people who say, I don't want to put a penny into this, but I want to be part of this ecosystem, and I think that'll be good for them.
Yeah, and I mean, as I said, you don't need anything more than tier zero alluvial. Some people only use it, like the bloody flish inside of Arena. God, nerf that thing. People are just, putting flish armies out there. You got 6 of them. That is a build that you could easily get in the overworld for free.
Yeah. All right. All right. So let's move on to this next segment here. So the capital raise. So you've talked about it. I'm not sure if you mentioned any numbers, but you said there is a capital raise coming soon. I think you said half of it was already accounted for. My question is, why do you think this is the best time for it, and what will it be used for?
So 2 things. Obviously, we probably don't need this, right? Like I genuinely think that once the game's out, we're talking 3 games that all have the ability to generate revenue. The market is coming back. We're seeing a huge amount of traction with gaming tokens. People are starting to flock into it again. I think we're going to look back and say, we probably didn't need to do that. But it's my responsibility to make sure that we've got enough capital, ideally at least 2 years of capital, right? Like at this stage, we're sort of transitioning. We're still definitely a startup, but we're sort of transitioning into like a medium scale. And with that, I would ideally like to see us have 2 years of capital at all times. And again, maybe the game launches, we look back and we're like, now we've got 5 years of capital in the first month or 2 months. Why the hell did we do that? It doesn't really matter because if that situation occurs, the tokenomics are such a way that the DAO will be buying back so much ILV that will fill whatever we sold will fill that gap so quickly that it's like it doesn't matter either way. What would be the situation which you can't control is if something catastrophic happened in the market or whatever, and we needed that 2 years of runway. And so it's basically a way for us to shore ourselves up. It'll make me feel better, make all the people in the team feel better. But then we're doing it differently this time. Instead of me going to framework, which they've helped out a bunch with introductions and stuff like that. But instead of just getting one firm to chuck in 10 million bucks, I've looked at this and I'm like, let's make this a marketing event. Like the one thing that I underestimated when we got that funding from Framework was how positive it made the sentiment. Right now, looking back, it's easy to say like, of course it would, right? Like if a firm like Framework does 3 months of DD, digs right in, then it signals something very, very positive, right? Now, that might not mean anything. Like we have a lot of community members that might have 5 grand of ILV, 10 grand of ILV. They're probably the most vocal, and they were the ones who came out and said like, oh, this is ridiculous, like they sold the token so cheap and whatever. But someone who's a little bit more silent, a big whale in the community, they look at that and they're like, if Framework did it, I'm in too. And we saw a huge increase in the token price when nothing really had happened. And so I'm looking at that, and obviously there's the network effects of having a firm like Framework double down on you. They have a huge network themselves. What if we could get like 6 or 7 or 8 of these funds to go in right before we launch? That is going to be an even more positive thing. Yeah, and so I think again, what I'm looking for there is to have all of these sort of silent whales that we have in our community to look at that and go, all right, now they're not, they're going to be here for another 2 years. If if the worst thing in the world happened, they're still here. And what that says to me, if I put my investor cap on, yes, it feels like it's been an eternity for us to build out these games, but in reality, we're building about one game every 15 months. So if you then go out and say, okay, and that's brand new studio, that's including the ramp up time of our team, that's including building the IP, that's including all of the art that we've front loaded. If I'm one of these big investors and all of a sudden I see, fuck, they've got 2 years runway again, they're at least going to get a whole nother game out before needing to generate a single drop of revenue. It's so bullish across the board and positive that it just makes sense to do.
Yeah. So maybe I'm a little too bullish on the token price, but you might have already answered this with the marketing part, but if we could see ILV hitting maybe $200 or $300 later this year, you'd get more bang for your buck, if you did a capital raise later this year versus right now. So, again, what's the reasoning behind it right now?
It doesn't matter. And the reason is because if the token price goes up to that 200, 300 mark, it's likely going to be because we are starting to generate massive amounts of revenue. If we're generating massive amounts of revenue, the DAO is buying back massive amounts of ILV. We'll plug the amount that we sell will be back in the treasury at the end of the year anyway. So who cares, right? Like the thing that a lot of people don't realize is the intention here is for us to be generating revenues like we were back in 2021. Now, I'm telling you, if we do that, the DAO is literally someone's going to write an IIP and say the DAO owns too many tokens. They need to either burn those tokens, which I think would be pretty cool. Like, let's say we have, I don't know, 1 million tokens, and I think the sweet spot is the DAO should be sitting on about, I'd say 2 million tokens. That would be comfortable. But if you're buying back so much ILV, it's going to get to a point where we're sitting on 3 million. And then we could do one of two things, right? We could burn 1 million tokens, which it's like 10% of the ILV supply is just incinerated. That's pretty cool. There's a bit of marketing that you could do around that. or we're going to literally distribute 1 million ILV to people who are staked in the protocol. Who's in? It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right? The way that we've set up the tokenomics, the thing that matters is that the games are successful, that people like playing them, they're happy to spend money in them. If we can achieve that, everything else will work out. Trust me, we spent months and months working out these tokenomics. It will all work out.
You say you're not the hype man, but you're hyping me up a little bit on this.
I'd say
Um,
I say I'm not the hype man. It's like because there's so like they're like he's the hype guy, and I'm like yeah, but I also need to go and do this shit. You know what I mean? Like it's not just like click your fingers and start talking about it. It's like 12 hours a day of like sitting here being on like 50 capital raise calls in between all of the other meetings that I do. It's like it's not just hype. There's some actual work that goes into it.
no, I know, I know. So another question with this capital raise. Would there be any opportunity for the community to get in on this raise? Because we saw just a couple months ago with Eth Lizards, I think they did 2.5 million just from the community. So would you know, is that in the plans to have the Illuvium community maybe get some cheaper ILV locked up for a little bit and be part of this capital raise?
Not this one. So it's definitely something that we want to do in the future, and it might even be just solely a community race that we end up doing in the future. I've always spoken about when the market is a little bit more favorable, and we've got a ton of players, and we're generating revenue, and all of these things start lining up. That's when we'll do another mega capital raise, which will give us the funding to build out this 10, 15, 20 year idea of an interoperable universe that has 10 games in it that are all connected. But we need to be strategic about it. And so I don't want to open it up to the community this time, but in the next one, absolutely.
All right, great. All right, so let's move on. And for anyone in the chat, probably seems like I've been ignoring you. There's a lot of things coming through. Right after we talk a little bit about the roadmap, community questions, I'm gonna start looking in the chat, and I want you to give me some hard questions to ask Kieran. So 10 minutes or so, and I'll get right to your questions. So yeah, so roadmap. Obviously, everybody wants to hear about this, the timeline. First question is, what's the next thing that we have to look forward to? Like, I'm assuming there's something before open beta comes, whether it's private beta 4 or what's going
Yeah,
on. What do we have to
testnet.
look forward
Obviously, testnet that will definitely be a thing. That may or may not be connected to the airdrop that I'm talking about, but we need a period inside of Q2 where we're testing out. Maybe it's overlapped. I don't know. We don't have a date on when we go onto IMEX's testnet, but there will be a period before we go live where we test things. I don't know how long that's going to be. I'm hoping that it's sort of 2 to 4 weeks. That would be the ideal, but that it's a huge thing. We're not just launching one game, we're launching 3 games. We're not just launching 3 games. There's multiple applications that need to work with that, like the fuel exchange and the Illuvidex fitting in all the NFTs. Like it's a very, very big job, and we need to make sure after 3.5 years the community deserves it to be taken with the utmost seriousness, and we'll do that.
Yeah. And so when you said 2 to 4 weeks, is that 2 to 4 weeks prior to open beta, or are you saying 2 to 4 weeks from now?
No, no, no. Prior to open beta.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Let's see. Um, so is that the only thing? Is the next thing open beta itself in Q2? I'm assuming it's still the plan.
Uh, I would say we would ideally like to see you shooting and hitting an atlas with a sword very, very shortly. It's definitely not going to be in open beta, but I think we will definitely, similar to how we did alluvial hunting, we'll leak what Andre and his team have been working on in the overworld. But that's that final step for us to be able to remove the auto battler component in the overworld, and it's literally just all laid out in front of you. You capture the Illuvium, you hunt them in the overworld, you fight them in the overworld, and then you capture them in the overworld. And there's no going to another realm. So it's not going to be ready for open beta, but hopefully we'll be able to show something very, very soon.
So is that something that we could see in private beta 4 and just not for the open beta, or we're not going to see that
I
for a
don't
little
think so.
while?
Just setting expectations, I don't think so.
And does that mean no alluvials in the overworld, or just no fighting
No, no,
alluvials?
no. There's 100% alluvials in the overworld, without a doubt.
Okay,
Yeah, that's part of the
just a
hunting
catching
mechanic.
mechanic. Yeah,
This is uh, this is combat.
awesome. All right, looking forward to that. Um, so for Q or open beta Q2, I know you're definitely not going to be able to give any dates, but what do you need to see happen for a date to be announced? Like, do you need to see X, Y, and Z is ready to go, and then we can say here's the date it's coming?
Yeah, so there needs to be the free to play version of Illuvium Zero needs to be complete, which is obviously that was a little bit last minute that we threw that in there, but it's absolutely needed, right? Like if we want to be able to go out and get the 2 million players that only have access on mobile, we can't expect them to go and buy a land plot, and even if we do, it's gated to 20,000 people. So that needs to expand. It needs to tie in with the airdrop, and we cannot go live without that. So that's the first thing. Overworld, we need to finalize integrating the last alluvials into the actual open world where you can hunt them down, but that's moving along at a really, really fast rate, so no issues there. And then for arena, we need to introduce the new game mode that the guys have been testing. It's so much better, right? Like it's literally so much better. I know a lot of people out there are like, arena needs improvements and whatever. When have we ever not listened to feedback in the community? It's not like we're sitting here like, you better like this game because we're not doing any changes, right? Like that's why some of the guys, the naysayers on Twitter and whatever are like, they're idiots. They don't know what they're doing. How can you even build a game like that? We get it, right? Like you're not giving us any new information. There is an entirely new mode which will likely make the current ascendant mode non-existent. This new mode is takes the linear gameplay out of it. It allows you to pivot, gives the player a lot more agency, means that you don't need to spend anywhere near as much time building teams, and even if you build a team that isn't quite as strong as someone else, you have the ability inside the game to pivot and still defeat your opponent. Whereas right now you go in there and it's like, oops, they're fire and I'm nature, so I better wait 15 minutes and go back to the deck builder for 30 minutes to, like, we get it. It's going to be fixed. And so that's one mode which will definitely get into open beta, which is awesome. I think that's going to help out Arena like 10x. And then there's another mode which I don't know if it'll get in, but, and I'm not even going to talk about it too much, but think Illuvium TFT, if you will. Which is obviously, for me, like, I'm not into Hearthstone. I'm not into like card games and whatever, but you give me TFT with alluvials and like multiple players also in the same lobby, you got me, right? Like that is something that I'm interested in. Way more RNG. for the casual player that doesn't want to sit there like sweating it out for 10 hours long, play a couple of games a day type thing, so much better. And so I'm really excited about that, but we don't have any there's no date on that. They're just Aaron's only just started building out the GDD for that.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about TFT because I really don't even. I never played it, so I don't know too much what you're talking about. But it definitely sounds pretty cool. Especially you bringing up that there's more RNG. I was always like a competitive person, and I was like, I don't want to see any RNG. I just want the best players to win. But after playing for a little while, I'm just like a little RNG might be nice here. Like I get a critical attack somewhere, so I can actually win a match.
But yeah, like like obviously, right? And this is the thing, right? Like it's not there's I can see one of them in the chat now and he's like he pisses me off so much, but it's like, dude, we can't rebuild the entire game in 4 days and then push the build and be like, there you go. Like we have been working on this since the very day that it released, and we got the feedback that players started being like, oh, it's a little bit too linear. Like, can we get something that's a little bit more exciting, more RNG? Like, yes, obviously, it's in beta. Like, there are going to be major changes. And so that's why I kind of laugh. And I've started like just blocking them out now, just being like, you know what? I'm not even going to listen to you. Like, play our next game, which you know you're going to do, right? And when they see the improvements, it's like, hey, we actually are listening to you. It's just we can't click our fingers and a brand new game comes out, right? Like, it's just it's not realistic.
Awesome. So one more thing you just mentioned, you alluded to this for TFT, but I don't know much about TFT. You said multiple players in the same lobby. Is there any type of like co-op mode with that? Like maybe I team up with somebody else and then we're going against 2v2 or anything like that?
No, no. It'll
No.
be you versus everyone else, but the idea is that like so TFT did this really cool thing where I'd never experienced this in a game. And Aaron introduced me to TFT, it must be like, I don't know, 5, maybe even 6 years ago. And it's all about feeling good, right? And so if you come fourth, it still comes up and says victory. And it's like, I don't know, the competitor in me is kind of like, well, that was bullshit. Like, I didn't win, and I'm pissed off that I didn't win. But it also softens the blow, which is like hard for me to even admit. But psychologically, it made it feel better, right? And the chance of me, if I come like sixth, and I'm like, first of all, okay, well, I beat 2 people, so that's pretty cool. The chance of me going into another game is so much higher than me coming up against someone in a 1v1 situation. And then when you add on top of that, that technically 4 people win, you just need to beat the bottom 4 people, it feels good. And then you're like, okay, I'm improving in this game. And maybe you come seventh next, but you're like, my first game I came fourth. So I'm in the mix here. And it's just for retention. They've obviously worked it out that it's just so much better to have that. And so that's this new game mode that we're looking to introduce. But again, I'm not saying it's coming tomorrow or anything like that. We've literally just done the pitch.
Good. I'm excited about that because, like I said, I'm a competitive player and I want to find something that, you know, I don't know, it works a little better for me, I guess. Um, I guess before we move on, I wanted to touch on that like multiplayer co-op again. Do you see that in any other part of the game? Like, could you see that in the overworld? Where I think this was mentioned before, where you might have some of your friends that you can run around with, but maybe if an alluvia pops up, you all experience that differently or something like that. Did I get that
I
right?
want to. I want to see, and again, this is just me. I'm like, I don't make any of the game design decisions. I just give feedback where I can. But I would love, like I've said from day one, that being able to go in with a group of friends, like you're questing, like back in the day, doing it in in WoW where you can go together and you can say, okay, we need to spend X amount of ETH to get into this region. Either you can like do partial payments, one person who's a whale just goes, I'll pay, you guys come in with me, and you've got 8 people that go into the overworld, and you try and like obviously there'll be normal alluvials roaming around, but that's when you see like the big raid bosses and you're all in it together
The
trying to take
Leviathans.
down these raid bosses or whatever. And yeah, maybe there's loot attached to that, like armor or whatever. I don't know, but that I think that would be a really cool way to eat, like just from the social factor, which is going to be there's a bunch of stuff that's going to be added in open beta when it comes to social features and like being able to talk to people, but that takes it to the next level, right? Like when you've actually going in, you're like someone screws up and you're like, dude, what the hell was that? So like, why didn't you use that ability? Like, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I think there's so like the cool thing about Illuvium, right? And we've seen it with uh, Arena. Is the reason why I'm not worried. A, it's in beta, right? And there's a ton of learnings that we've got from there. But think about the base, just the whole idea that we can say like, okay, now we're going to take more of a stance of like adding a little bit more RNG, making it multiplayer, like, but having this core IP that sits underneath it, where these alluvials, people fucking love them, right? Like that idea, that Pokemon-esque feeling where psychologically you were like, I fucking love that character. It exists with
Yeah.
us, which is so much harder than going back to the drawing board, changing a few game rules, and then coming back and saying, okay, here's a new mode. You can't just go and create a new IP. It takes so much time. We've spent so much money, so much resources into building out an IP where anything is possible off the basis of it. And that's why Riot with League of Legends is so good, because you love the characters, right? Like you get that same feeling where give me any game that I can go and play Miss Fortune or whatever, and I'm in, right? Because I know what she's like, I know her abilities, I know how fast she attacks, I get what class she like. All of these things comes down to building IP, and that we have, right? Like building new games and experiences on top of that is easy. The hard part is
Yep.
the IP.
Yeah. I mean, that's what hooked me from the beginning. Like, I was that generation that played Pokemon Red, and I played Pokemon for years. And honestly, before I even knew anything about Illuvium, I saw that the trailer, what, 3 years ago at this point, before the token even came out. And I just saw those, and I was just like, this is the adult Pokemon that I've been waiting for. I'm getting into it now. Yeah, so that's very exciting to me. But I just want to touch on one other thing that you mentioned earlier. See if I can squeeze something out of you. So you said it could
Sure.
be 8 people going into the overworld fighting these raid bosses. Are these the Leviathans?
It's not even a thing, right? It's just something that I have constantly nagged Aaron and Ben about, saying like, in the future, we've tested out multiplayer. Andre did a build about 12 months ago where he was shooting me in the overworld, and I was like, wow, but like, does that turn into an FPS? Does that turn into like overworld capturing but multiplayer? I don't know, but the I guess the important thing to note there is the base that we have. It can be turned into whatever we want.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. Before I move on to the community questions, one more thing I wanted to touch on. Um, so when it comes to Illuvium Zero, like fuel production, I guess there had been rumor in the past that it could come out early so we could start producing some fuel before open beta hits. Do you see that as a possibility? And if they're launching at the same time, do you see a problem with having so little fuel on the market for the overworld players to buy?
Well, this was sort of one of the pluses to us doing this airdrop, is it puts fuel into the market prior to us actually going live. But no, the intention is for us. I mean, we may do something in the future, but like prior to launch that changes this. But no, the intention is for us to have Illuvium Zero start generating fuel at the same time as Overworld goes live. Now we've got, whatever, it's a million plus. There's potentially another drop coming where you'd have about 2 million of fuel in the system. But we can quickly change things if we need to. If demand's outrageous, there are ICCPs that we can implement for this.
Awesome. All right, so I don't know how much time you have left, but I want to get to some community questions, and we can answer them until you need to go.
Cool.
So I do have some I had prepped from an X post I made, but now I'm looking in the chat. So if you have any good questions for Kieran, leave them in the chat, and I will bring them up. All right, here's a good one right away. All right, so G Hamster. Roughly how much is a stage 1 overworld run gonna cost? Like, do you have any idea? Stage 1, 2, 3. What are we looking at for, cost to get into one of these?
That's, goddamn. I've seen so many good questions, and I saw that one. I was like, uh-oh.
Don't click.
But no, so I last week I said to Dimitri, who's building out the economy and setting all of the prices, like we need this locked in ASAP. Technically, we don't until we get to IMX's testnet, and maybe IMX's testnet is going to change things, right? Like once we go to PB4, that might change the pricing again. So it doesn't really matter. All I'll say is we want it to be accessible to a large amount of people, right? Like mass market.
All right. So it should be an easy question for you. Will there be hollow and dark hollow versions of Tier 0 alluvials? Because I'd imagine though you could be a free-to-play player and get some value out of those.
Yeah, I think there's going to be hollow and dark hollow of everything, including the tier zero alluvials. I don't know that I did, like for certain, but I'm pretty sure.
All right. Let's see. How does RevDis work in the marketplace? So I'm guessing maybe secondary sales we're talking about here. Are secondary sales going to be used in RevDis to the ILV stakers?
So anytime someone trades, we make a fee. That fee goes inside the vault, and then exactly the same as the other all the other funds that we generate. It gets to a certain point where that vault will trigger, and then we buy ILV off the market, and then we send that ILV back to people who are staked in the protocol.
Okay. So I just saw a funny comment here. We're not going to answer this one, but I'm bringing it up anyways.
I don't even understand what that means.
I don't even want to know. All right, let's see. Fight for ETH. What do you got here? When will we see a new game mode? Now, Kieran already touched on something like that. Are you saying maybe something completely different? Maybe a shooter or a cart game? Like, how far out are we looking for something like that?
I think he means the new game mode for Arena, I'm assuming.
Maybe.
Let's assume he means that. And
Okay.
if that's the case, I would say like we're doing some pretty thorough testing at the moment. So I would assume that they're looking to get that in uh, before we actually go live on testnet.
Okay. Here's another good question I like here. So how frequent will new alluvials be added to the list? So I'm guessing we have the first set of what 185 alluvials. At some point, the bonding curve is gonna go down. They're gonna run out. How how frequently are we gonna see new alluvials after that? Or are we gonna just see a whole new set of 150 at some point?
So there's different. First of all, there's brand new alluvials, like brand new lines of alluvials, and then there's variations of existing ones. So like right now, Ramfire being Inferno, he will change to call it Frost or whatever, right? And so there'll be those types of variations. and then there'll be completely new lines, and but there'll be smaller updates, right? Like there's not going to be 200 new alluvials every single 12 months when a new set comes out. But and the reason is the second part of that question: how hard is it to create a new alluvial? It's hard. It touches about, I'd say, like 55 people.
Yeah. Okay. So Illuvium Gamer has a hard question, I guess. When, or I guess, what would have to happen for you to consider Illuvium a failed project?
Run out of money, I'm assuming.
Run out of money? Okay. Makes sense. Let's see. Um,
My BTC prediction is 110K.
100 at the top of the market?
End of this year. I don't think the top of the market is the end of this year, to be honest. I think we
Oh,
go a
okay.
little bit further.
Yep, yep. I see that too. All right. So, question from Eric Cruz. Do you have any plans to resize the team after launch? I'm guessing add more team members, expand the team.
We're in a pretty good place as it stands now. Like obviously, you start generating a ton of revenue. There's going to be a bunch of uh, potential opportunities that pop up. We'll need to start creating new games. Maybe that requires a couple of different skill sets, but for the most part, we consolidated a little bit in the bear market, just slowly over time, and we're at a pretty sweet spot right now.
Awesome. All right. So, will there be a new cinematic trailer? I know there's going to be a new one. When could we expect that? Like right before open beta or
No, so
sometime
I
before?
want to do. I want to launch that about. I haven't decided, but between 2 to 4 weeks prior to us going live with open beta, so we're getting pretty close. They're doing the final touches on. There's two additional. So there's two things there. There's a marketing trailer which will go live like 2 to 4 weeks before, and then there's the full version which is actually part of the in-game experience when you're going just before you go through the tutorial. That's the first thing that you watch, and that's like the 3.5 minute version. It's fucking amazing. But then what I want to do is get up the premiere of the marketing trailer that will put up probably about a month before, and then it will actually launch 2 to 4 weeks prior to open beta. So like very, very soon, you're going to see us start advertising that. And I want to have it up for a long time so we can have like tons and tons and tons of people waiting. So that event, when you see it, because like it is so good. Like I'm not even joking. If you like, I think if you're obviously I'm I know everything about the IP and the storyline and stuff like that. So for me, I'm left like wanting more, right? Like you watch it and it's like, like get me in, right? Like, and not only get me in, like where's the rest of the movie is sort of where you're at. Like that's the level that we've gone
That's what
to.
I was just about to say. Every trailer in whatever's come out, like I always just whether it's the 3.5 minute one or the 30-second one, like I always just want it to keep going. Like I'm a little disappointed to hear 3.5 minutes. I want to see a 10-minute cinematic trailer to get me hyped up.
Well, this one's gonna crush your soul, right? Like
Yeah.
you're literally. I've watched it. It's got a couple of scenes that are still not completely polished, and my wife and I have watched it like I don't even know, like 50 times. It's getting disgusting, but it's just so damn good, right? Like, and I think having that moment where we've never really like we've obviously been in a bit of a rush before we've released those types of things, It's not going to be the case here. Like we're so close to being done with that. We have the opportunity to properly hype people up, and it'll be the first time that you genuinely start to see the lore be uncovered, and you're like, just let me in, right? Like just let me in right now. And again, it speaks to the IP, right? Like the characters that we've chosen inside of the cinematic trailer, you like, you love them, you know them, you feel it's like, oh, that's, I can't believe that. Like my wife, who doesn't really follow it, she's like, oh, it's cute, but I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like that, like what just happened. I'm not going to reveal anything, but I'm like, what just happened fits into this storyline down the track. And she's like, oh, right. And I'm, yeah. So it's fucking good, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. That I'm honestly more excited about that and the lore and getting to, like connect more with the IP. Like that really excites me. Um, let's see. So we've hit an hour. There are some more questions in here. Do you want to take more questions, or do you got to get going?
Let me see. I've got a meeting in about 30 minutes, but I haven't eaten today and I've been up since 4 a.m. I was minting those fucking whales. But,
I had to hustle before we got on this because I was at work all day, and then I was like, I'll get some. So I went and I got two whales myself.
yeah, I don't even know what I'm doing there. I get sucked up. I find a good team and I'm like, oh, you guys are cool. I start speaking to them and I'm like, nah, don't do that. Do this. Like, change this. It reminds me of Eth Lizards when that first started. I was like, I love what you guys are doing here, but God, we need some direction here. Like, what the,
Yeah.
like, you can't just mint NFTs and just be like, whoop-de-doo. Like,
Right.
you gotta have some, and look at those guys, so I don't know. I can't spend too much time on it, but like 4 a.m. I'm there. My wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I'm minting these fucking NFTs. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned ETH lizards, and I know there's going to be a ton of ETH lizards holders, watching this. Um, do you anything with ETH lizards that you can share with us? Like, you are the janitor over there, right? Like, you have any plans to? I don't want to use the word hype, but like what's going on with ETH lizards from your end?
So the really good thing, as you know, it was a bit of a struggle. I think we went through like three different teams, maybe two. My memory's a little bit blurred with that, but I promised the lizard holders that I would never let them go astray, and so I've always had a focus on it. I just needed to find someone that could run it, that knew what they were doing in terms of like, here's the direction that I want you to take. Just drive it forward. And
Mm-hmm.
when Annie came to me, I was like, fuck yes. Like, yes, absolutely. So it's meant I still meet with Annie like once or twice a week, but
Yeah.
it's less of like, what are you doing? More of like, wow, I can't believe you've done that. Like that's awesome. I didn't even know you were doing it. So like it, as much as it kind of would look like from externally that I don't have as much to do with it, that's 100% true. But that's purely because Annie and the team are doing an exceptional job. But at the same time, I'm working with them pretty closely, and I just I made it. I've just got this idea that someone needs to build a tower defense game, and Annie's going to GDC this week or next week. I don't even know where it is, but pretty soon. And I was like, find a tower defense game and acquire them, right? And if you don't, I will personally, and just do it, because I think dormant NFTs where you've bought into these games as a way for them to fund their development, which is fine, whatever. But it'd be cool if if like inside of this tower defense game, you've got your defenses, but the people attacking are like the NFTs that you have, and you can, like, I don't know, it would be a cool experience for people to do that. So that's what I've told him what to do, but it's his own beast now, right? Like
Yeah.
I gave it over to the community. I said, I've done my part here. I'll obviously make sure that they keep on going in the right direction, but it's very much Annie and Lou's beast now.
Yeah. I think you probably disappointed some people today though, changing the PFP.
It's temporary. Of course I'm going back to my OG lizard. That's the thing that got like when they sent me that, the guy this is like again like 3 teams back. When they sent me that lizard, I was like, this is the stupidest but greatest thing I've ever seen. Like, what the hell is this? And that whole story of Eth Lizards starting out of the Illuvium Discord, just a bunch of degenerate people. But then me being like, what are you doing? Like, this is like, I love this lizard. It is my identity inside of Web3 and it will be forever. But like, let's get some things going. So it's temporary. I know it was a big deal, but I've been working with those whale guys to get them on the right track, and so I felt like it was a nice thing to do. But I'll change back.
Yeah. No, and I got my first ETH lizard from you before I even really knew what they were. Before you probably even knew who I was. I think you put out a post on X or on Twitter at that time. I wasn't even on Twitter. Somebody was just like, make yourself a Twitter account, get on there. Kieran's giving out some ETH lizards. So
So
you sent me one, and I've been holding on to it the whole time.
So in actual value, I think I gave away. I did the numbers on this the other day when friends and I came over, though, because I gave a bunch to my friends as well. Uh, they were like, "How much have you given away in ethers?" Because I only hold one now. I hold my one OG one, and we worked it out. It was like 7.5 million US in ETH lizards that I'd given out. Plus, I had to buy out the old team because they'd done a bunch of work and they were like, what do we get? So I definitely don't want to tell my wife this, but I'm probably like, I don't know, like 200K in the hole from ETH lizards. But it's a fun community project. It's doing what I wanted it to do in terms of like the the legacy holders of those ETH lizards, the crossover that we have with Illuvium and the fact that they permeate that through the entire ecosystem, these are the things that from the outset you might not think that that has value, but if you understand like grassroots crypto and network effects inside of Web3, that play cost me 200, but how much has it actually made me in terms of ILV when I look at my own holdings, right? So
Yeah,
I don't know. I love the lizards.
yeah. Now I'd hope if people were thinking like me, like if I got a gift, like I did get a gift from you, and actually TSG early on too, uh, in ETH Lizard, I will never sell those because it just doesn't seem right. You get a gift and then sell it. So to me, those are two ETH Lizards I will never sell because they were gifted. So if more people are thinking like that, then you just almost decrease the liquid supply right there because people are like, I can't sell this. Kieran gave it to me. He's gonna hate me
Yeah.
forever if he knows it.
Oh, I mean, fuck. I think there was one funny situation where someone did that and I called him out because it was like, give it to them and they flip it the next day. Like, that's a little bit bullshit, but I like, trust me, dude, I'm not literally there going like, on the 5th of November in 2022, I sent Najay for an ETH lizard, like, now he's flipped. Like, no, dude, I got way too much shit to deal with.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know you gotta eat a little something before your next meeting. So, thank you so much for coming on. I think this has been a great chat here. We got 84 people still in here watching. Uh, so yeah, this has been great. Thanks for coming on. Always welcome back on here. I'll probably reach back out in a few months, maybe right after open beta, and see if I can get you back on and have another conversation.
Sure. Yeah, as I said, happy to speak to anyone before launch. Obviously, time has been a little bit short given the capital raise and all of the other stuff that's been going on behind the scenes, but gotta stick out. We've got to be present in the community. That's one thing that has definitely shown really, really positive results, listening to feedback. And hopefully over the next couple of months as we go into testnet, you'll see that across all the games, across like community stuff, like we are listening and we are implementing. And look, really appreciate what you do, man. I know you grind a lot. I know you spend a lot of hours on building Illuvium. So I really, really appreciate it, and I'm happy to come on whenever.
Awesome. So I do have a link down below. So if you're watching this and don't have an Illuvium account yet, go use that link. But I mean, yeah, that's about it. Thanks for
Awesome.
watching. Thanks for coming
See you,
on.
man.
All right,
Cheers.
see you later.